experience. I had none. I came back from the convention. I was rather dejected, but the play was ready to go. We had the production of Story Theater. It turned out very well. Everybody seemed to like it. It was a big success. So by the end of the summer of 1975, I had a graduate degree in college, a successful play, good health, a boyfriend, and no job. What was I to do? Well, we began looking around at other places that we might find work, since we were in such completely opposite fields. We looked at other cities that we might be able to use as, or might be able to move to. We checked out several and went there and visited them and finally decided on Indianapolis. We told our parents that we were going to move to Indianapolis. They thought we were completely nuts. Neither of us had a job here, and we knew not one soul here. But we had found that Indianapolis seemed to have what we wanted, so since we were both over 21, we moved here. The last day of March of 1977 was the day of our move, and we arrived the next day, April 1st, April Fool's Day, which our parents thought was totally appropriate. Rick found a job with Merchants National Bank. I found a job with the Department of Parks and Recreation here. I would go to different schools and playgrounds and teach puppetry, have the children make puppets, and then we would have a little show. When I had finished that summer, Rick continued at the bank, and I found a job with the Indianapolis Civic Theater. I taught for the Junior Civic Theater and again taught puppetry. We decided during that time to get married. So we went back to Martinsville after telling our parents about this and planning the wedding in the fall, and we were married on December the 26th, 1977. We returned to Indianapolis. I was going to buy a new pair of glasses, but I noticed that my present glasses didn't seem to be working very well. It seemed that I just couldn't see as well as I had before. So I thought, well, when I go to Martinsville in February, I'll go back and see Dr. Campbell, which I did. He checked me over and said, Frances, your eye measurements have changed considerably. You need to go see a very good eye doctor as soon as you return to Indianapolis. Well, I was shocked to hear that, but I did as he said. I went to see not just an ophthalmologist, I was recommended to a neuro-ophthalmologist named Dr. David Zoll. He worked for the Indiana University Medical Center, as it was then named. He was in this tiny little building called the Rotary Building there. He checked me over and said, yes, Dr. Campbell was right, and you need to go see Dr. Robert Campbell. Now, this is Campbell with a B, you know, like the soup. So don't get them mixed up. Oh dear, I have to go and see another neurosurgeon. I went to see Dr. Campbell, and I thought to myself, oh dear, what kind of tests are they going to run to see about this? I was very concerned about it. Dr. Campbell said, you need to have a test. And then he added, you can have a CT scan. By 1978, they had invented the CT scan at last. You could go have a CT scan in the hospital, just lie down on the table, not do anything that really hurt so much, and then you could get up because you could go in there as an outpatient and then go see your doctor. And that's just what I did. I had the CT scan, brought it back after the radiologist had seen it, and showed it to Dr. Campbell. Dr. Campbell looked at it up on his screen and said, "The brain tumor in your head has grown back. It's pressing on your brainstem. You have to have it removed again." Oh, no, that's impossible, I said. Dr. Odom told me that the brain tumor was benign. Well, Dr. Campbell said to me, sometimes even benign brain tumors can grow back. They grow back very slowly, and it doesn't always happen, just sometimes, and it has with you. A brain teaser. What a terrible brain teaser that was. But I arranged the date for my brain surgery for that spring of 1978. He operated on me, and the brain tumor turned out to be benign once again. I was in the neurosurgical intensive care unit. I began to lose some of my memory because I had some swelling in my head. This temporary condition is called aphasia, where losing your memory for a long time is called amnesia. I had aphasia. I could not read or really interpret a lot of what people had to say. Obviously, the nurses brought me a menu and wanted me to pick out what I wanted for dinner. I looked at it. It was like Greek to me. But I checked off something or other. Because that night, when Rick came in, there I was eating spaghetti. When my brain was swollen, and I could not remember even my last name, my new last name, Whitener, since I had had that name for only 4 months. I could remember a lot of other things that were way in the back of my mind, maybe in the subconscious. I pondered, why does Daddy always seem so unhappy? Is it because of something I have done, or Mama, or Julia, or Bob? And I came to realize, no, it's not because of anything we've done. The unhappiness is in Daddy. I figured that out, and dozens of other things that I hadn't thought of for years and years and years. After the brain swelling began to go down and I could finally remember a few things, they put me in a regular room, and I slowly began to retrieve my memory. I was there for a week or so, and finally I could go home. I was there in the house for probably a month or so, still retrieving my memory, when I received a telephone call. Rick handed me the phone, and a man said, I'm calling from the speech department. It was the head of the speech, theater, and communications department at IUPUI. I had interviewed for a job teaching speech there the previous year, but there were no openings. But this year, there were. He said, there are several openings. Would you like to teach speech this fall? And I replied, yes, I'd love to teach speech. Now, that's a good reason to get your memory to come back. If you're going to be a teacher, my memory did come back, even if not all my hair did. I began teaching speech. I taught there from 1978 until 1982. Every 6 months, I would go in for a CT scan to check how things were going in my head. It was sort of like going before the parole board twice a year to see if I got 6 more months of probation. And I did until 1982. The phone rang one day, and Dr. Campbell's secretary said to me, "Come in and bring your husband." This sounds ominous to me, I thought. Rick and I went in, and Dr. Campbell said, "I have looked at your CT scan from a few days ago, and the tumor has grown back again." Another brain teaser. I could not believe it. Now, it was just the beginning of the semester, and I had just started teaching my speech classes, and I asked him, would it be all right for me to wait until the speech classes are over in December and have the operation then? Since this was a slow-growing tumor, Dr. Campbell said yes, that would be all right. I finished my speech classes, and then right before Christmas, I had the 3rd brain surgery. The brain tumor was benign, I am happy to say. Actually, going into the hospital near the end of December is not a bad idea. The reason for that is that there are almost no other patients there. I was one of the few patients and consequently received all of the attention from the doctors and nurses that I wanted. I had a room all to myself. There was no roommate, no mama's family. Oh, it was wonderful. And I got well sooner. You see, they were getting you out of the bed faster. They didn't make you stay in the bed for a week anymore because the doctors and nurses had found that the sooner they got you out of the bed and up walking around, the more quickly you began to get well. So, on Christmas Eve, Rick came to my room and sat next to my bed. We watched the movie White Christmas on TV and held hands the entire time. When the movie was over, we kissed each other goodnight. He went home, and I went to sleep. The next day, Christmas Day, he came back with all of these get well cards and Christmas cards and read them to me. And that day after that, Julia arrived, and the 3 of us all went home together on our anniversary. Oh, it was just great. Julia drove me around, cooked food for us, washed clothes, did all the things needed in the house, and it was just wonderful having her there and just to be able to be back with the 3 of them and with our 2 cats at home. I had the obligatory 6-month CT scan after that amount of time had passed. By then, I was not teaching speech anymore. I was teaching puppetry, creative drama, and beginning acting classes at various elementary schools around Indianapolis. So I was having a good time doing that, and I was very happy to hear this CT scan was just fine. I thought it would be. It's been only 6 months. And then after 6 more months had passed, I went and I had the 2nd CT scan. I just knew it would be all right until the phone rang. And a voice from Dr. Campbell's secretary said, "Come in and bring your husband." Rick and I went in. "The tumor has grown back again," Dr. Campbell said. "You have to have it out a 4th time." "Well, Dr. Campbell, my hair has just grown back. It had been only a year." So, 14 months later, I had the 4th brain surgery, and it was still benign. And Dr. Campbell said to me after that, "I think after you have recovered some, you need to start radiation therapy. I agreed. A month or so passed, and I began the radiation therapy. What they did for the radiation therapy for me was to make a mask for me that was the exact outline of my face. That way they could mark on the mask over here on the side where the brain tumor was, rather than having to mark on my face. I would go in every day. I had to go 5 days a week for 5.5 weeks and have the radiation therapy. I would go into the radiation room. There was a large machine hanging from the ceiling. The nurses would say, "Now, lie here on the table." They would place the mask over my face and clamp it to the table and leave the room, close the very heavy doors that I would hear slam after they were out, and say to me over the intercom, "Breathe in, hold it, breathe out." They did this several more times. And then I was through. I was hoping, I just want to make it through the next 5 weeks. I just want to make it through the next 3 weeks of radiation. I just want to make it through the next week of radiation. Finally, the radiation therapy ended. I thought everything would be fine, but I wasn't happy then at all. I thought my life would just go on as it had, but that's not how things turned out. I was so depressed. I went into this serious state of depression. I would stay in bed every day until mid-afternoon, and I would just cry and cry and cry. My stomach hurt so much that I had to go back and see my regular doctor and get some medicine for this. I began to realize then that your body, your mind, and your soul work together. At least they do in me, and maybe in a number of you and other people too. And when one of those parts of us isn't working, often the others don't either. The other two were suffering along with my body. And I had to do something to help myself. I had to go back to the doctor and get an antidepressant to help me try to pull myself out of this deep hole I was in. And I also had to talk with my psychologist numerous times. I finally had to come to terms with the fact that this problem would be with me always, regardless of whether it was active or dormant. I had to accept that. That was a hard thing for me to do, but I finally did. And when I did, I was able to pull myself out of that deep hole. I looked up one day, and for the first time in probably 3 months, I could see the sun. I got out of that hole, and I began to use my time just as well as I possibly could from what I